Understanding authoritarianism begins with recognizing the warning signs. It's not like a sudden storm, but rather a slow creep, a gradual dismantling of freedoms. It often starts when leaders seek to consolidate power, chipping away at the structures that limit them. Opposition voices are usually the first targets, silenced through various means, both legal and extra-legal. Disinformation becomes a common tool, spreading confusion and distrust. Political violence can simmer and then erupt, often fueled by rhetoric. Independent institutions, once a check on power, find themselves politicized and weakened by these emerging regimes. This pattern is observed across history and nations. A key characteristic of rising authoritarianism is the erosion of democratic norms. These unwritten rules, the shared understandings that make democracy function, are attacked or ignored, making the system itself vulnerable. Checks and balances, designed to prevent any one branch of government from becoming too powerful, are systematically undermined. Leaders may fill crucial positions with loyalists instead of qualified individuals, ensuring that institutions like the judiciary or the legislature bend to the executive's will. The decay is often subtle at first, making it harder for citizens to recognize the danger until significant damage is done. Furthermore, the suppression of opposition is a clear indicator. This doesn't always mean overt violence initially. It can start with targeting political opponents through legal or financial means. Smear campaigns are common, designed to discredit dissenters. The goal is to create an environment where challenging the ruling power is risky. Citizens begin to fear personal or professional consequences for speaking out. This fear is a powerful tool for control, stifling debate and allowing the regime to push its agenda with less resistance. A climate of public fear and the threat of retribution are hallmarks of this slide. Finally, the control and manipulation of information play a vital role. Authoritarian leaders understand the power of narrative. They seek to control the media, either directly or indirectly. Independent news outlets might face financial pressure, regulatory harassment, or outright attacks. The regime promotes its own version of events, often through state-controlled media or friendly outlets. Elections, if they are still held, may be manipulated. The playing field is tilted to ensure the desired outcome. The use of state resources to maintain power and suppress any form of opposition becomes widespread, further entrenching the regime. History offers stark lessons about authoritarian rule. Nazi Germany, under Adolf Hitler from 1933 to 1945, stands as a chilling example. It demonstrated how a nation could descend into totalitarian control. The regime demanded extreme citizen participation, often coerced. Institutions like the Hitler Youth indoctrinated the young. Opposition was brutally suppressed, and any dissent was met with severe punishment. The media was a propaganda machine. Hitler centralized power, eliminated rivals, and pursued aggressive expansionism. The systematic persecution and genocide of minorities, particularly Jewish people, revealed the horrific endpoint of such ideologies. The Soviet Union, especially under Joseph Stalin, provides another somber case study. From the 1920s until his death in 1953, Stalin consolidated absolute power. The state controlled all aspects of life. Political repression was rampant, with purges eliminating millions deemed enemies of the state. Dissent was unthinkable and met with imprisonment, exile, or execution. Collectivization of agriculture led to famine. The cult of personality around Stalin was pervasive. While claiming to represent the workers, the regime was characterized by fear, surveillance, and the complete absence of individual freedoms, all under a centralized communist party. Fascist Italy, led by Benito Mussolini from 1922 to 1943, showcased another variant of authoritarianism. Mussolini rose to power by exploiting post-war instability and nationalist sentiments. He established a dictatorship, emphasizing aggressive nationalism and militarism. Power was centralized in his hands as Il Duce. The media was strictly controlled, disseminating fascist propaganda. Political opposition was suppressed, often violently, by black-shirt militias. While not as total in its control as Nazi Germany initially, Fascist Italy systematically dismantled democratic institutions and glorified the state above the individual, paving the way for imperial ambitions. Francoist Spain, under General Francisco Franco, endured nearly 4 decades of dictatorship, from 1939 to 1975. Emerging victorious from a brutal civil war, Franco established an autocratic regime. Political repression was severe, with thousands imprisoned or executed. Censorship was strict, controlling all forms of public expression. Democratic freedoms were non-existent. The regime promoted a conservative nationalist ideology closely allied with the Catholic Church. Spain remained isolated from much of Europe for many years. Franco's death eventually led to a transition to democracy, but the scars of his long rule remained. Modern leaders with authoritarian tendencies often employ a style known as authoritarian populism. This approach combines authoritarian practices with populist rhetoric. Such leaders claim to represent the true people against corrupt elites or dangerous outgroups. They frequently use fear-mongering and scapegoating, often targeting marginalized communities or immigrants. Nativism, the idea of prioritizing native-born inhabitants, becomes a powerful rallying cry. While they may contest elections, maintaining a facade of democracy, they simultaneously work to disenfranchise opposition or undermine the fairness of the electoral process through various subtle and overt means. Consider Viktor Orban in Hungary. His government has become known for its anti-immigrant policies and the systematic undermining of democratic institutions. Key state agencies have been filled with loyalists, eroding their independence. The media landscape has been reshaped, with critical outlets facing financial pressure or takeovers by government allies. University budgets have been cut, particularly for institutions perceived as critical of the government, a tactic to suppress dissent within academia. Orban's Fidesz party has expertly used its parliamentary majority to change laws and consolidate power, creating what some call an illiberal democracy within the European Union. In Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan's rule has also shown significant authoritarian shifts. Initially seen as a reformer, Erdogan and his party have increasingly centralized power. The judiciary and other institutions have been used to target political opponents and critics. Mass demonstrations have been met with harsh responses. Following a coup attempt in 2016, widespread purges occurred in the military, civil service and academia. Media freedom has been severely curtailed, with many journalists imprisoned. Constitutional changes have expanded presidential powers, further concentrating authority in Erdogan's hands and weakening parliamentary oversight, leading to concerns about the rule of law. Other figures globally exhibit similar patterns. In India, Narendra Modi's government has faced criticism for the prosecution of critics and the promotion of Hindu nationalism, raising concerns for minority rights. Giorgia Meloni in Italy has implemented policies targeting NGOs rescuing migrants and has taken discriminatory stances against LGBTQ+ couples. Even in established democracies, figures like Donald Trump in the USA have utilized populist rhetoric, attacked democratic norms like the Stop the Steal campaign, and scapegoated groups to galvanize support. These examples highlight a global trend where leaders test the boundaries of democratic governance, often with considerable popular backing initially. The question of whether America is turning authoritarian requires careful, sober consideration. Democratic systems are not immutable, they are fragile constructs that require constant vigilance and upkeep. The United States, despite its long democratic tradition, is not immune to the pressures seen elsewhere in the world. Recent years have revealed vulnerabilities within its institutions and a polarization of its populace that can be exploited by those seeking to concentrate power. Understanding these vulnerabilities is the first step toward addressing them and reinforcing democratic resilience for future generations. One significant concern revolves around the erosion of democratic norms and the increasing politicization of previously independent institutions. When trust in electoral processes is deliberately undermined, or when government agencies are used for partisan ends, the foundations of democracy weaken. The peaceful transfer of power, once a hallmark of American democracy, has been challenged. Rhetoric that demonizes political opponents and casts them as enemies rather than legitimate adversaries contributes to a toxic political environment. This creates space for actions that might have once been considered unthinkable, pushing the boundaries of acceptable political behavior further each time. The role of disinformation and the control of narratives also pose a substantial threat. In an era of fragmented media and social media echo chambers, it becomes easier to spread falsehoods and manipulate public opinion. When citizens cannot agree on basic facts, constructive political discourse becomes nearly impossible. Leaders who consistently attack credible news sources while promoting their own narratives contribute to this problem. This creates an environment where accountability is diminished, as the public struggles to discern truth from politically motivated fiction, making informed decision-making more challenging for everyone involved. Furthermore, the concentration of executive power is a recurring theme in discussions about democratic backsliding. Attempts to expand the authority of the presidency at the expense of the legislative and judicial branches can upset the delicate balance of power. When presidents bypass traditional channels, issue executive orders extensively, or openly defy oversight, it signals a disregard for established democratic processes. While some executive actions are necessary, a consistent pattern of overreach can lead to a gradual shift towards a more autocratic system where the will of one individual or a small group overrides broader democratic consent. Section 5, Trump's presidency, a case study in democratic strain. Examining the period around Donald Trump's presidency, particularly considering hypothetical scenarios for a second term as discussed in early 2025, offers a specific lens on democratic strain. Many political scientists and observers noted a significant increase in concern for the health of American democracy during this time. While robust defenses of democratic institutions were prominent after his initial election in 2016, some analyses suggested a shift towards a degree of indifference or a view that earlier concerns might have been overstated, creating a potentially more perilous environment for democratic norms if unchecked. Specific actions and rhetoric attributed to this period paint a concerning picture. For instance, persistent attacks on the media, with the Federal Communications Commission in a hypothetical scenario investigating major broadcast outlets critical of the administration, sparing pro-Trump networks mirrored tactics seen in countries like Hungary under Orban. Threats to withhold federal funding from universities perceived as critical also echoed Orban's strategies for suppressing academic dissent and intellectual independence. These actions, whether fully realized or merely threatened, contribute to an atmosphere of intimidation and can chill free speech and critical inquiry within these vital institutions. The Stop the Steal campaign following the 2020 election served as a stark example of undermining democratic norms. By persistently questioning the legitimacy of an election without credible evidence and encouraging followers to do the same, faith in the cornerstone of democratic governance, free and fair elections, was eroded. Calls for stricter voter ID laws, often framed as measures against fraud, were seen by critics as attempts to disenfranchise certain voter demographics, further tilting the electoral playing field. Such maneuvers, characteristic of authoritarian populism, aim to maintain power by manipulating the rules of the democratic game itself. Despite these concerning indicators, it's also important to note countervailing factors. Trump's approval ratings, even in hypothetical re-election scenarios, often remained below 50%, suggesting that overwhelming popular support for drastic authoritarian measures might be limited. Furthermore, the American judicial system, particularly lower courts, often acted as a check on executive overreach during his first term, striking down or modifying certain policies. This highlights the resilience of some institutions, yet underscores the ongoing tension between authoritarian impulses and the structures designed to constrain them, a battle that requires constant public engagement. Section 6, the bulwarks of freedom, strengthening democratic institutions. To resist authoritarian tendencies, society must actively work to strengthen its democratic institutions. These institutions are the bedrock of a free society. An independent judiciary is paramount. Courts must be able to make decisions based on law, not political pressure. Judges should be appointed for their expertise and impartiality, not their loyalty to a particular leader or party. When the judiciary is compromised, the rule of law itself is threatened, leaving citizens vulnerable to arbitrary power. Protecting judicial independence requires public support and vigilance against attempts to politicize the courts. A free and independent press is another critical bulwark. The media serves as a watchdog, holding power accountable and informing the public. Efforts to control, intimidate, or discredit journalists must be resisted. Supporting diverse and investigative journalism helps ensure that citizens have access to reliable information from multiple perspectives. Media literacy is also crucial, enabling citizens to discern credible news from disinformation. A well-informed populace is less susceptible to manipulation and better equipped to participate meaningfully in democratic life, making choices based on facts rather than falsehoods. Strong legislative bodies, capable of exercising genuine oversight and providing a check on executive power, are essential. Legislatures should not be rubber stamps for the ruling party. They must maintain their independence and fulfill their constitutional roles of lawmaking and scrutiny. This requires legislators committed to democratic principles above partisan loyalty. Furthermore, robust electoral systems that are free, fair, and accessible to all eligible citizens are fundamental. Protecting voting rights and ensuring the integrity of elections are non-negotiable aspects of a healthy democracy that must be constantly defended from any form of attack. Finally, a vibrant civil society acts as a crucial defense. This includes non-governmental organizations, community groups, advocacy organizations, and active citizens. These groups can monitor government actions, advocate for rights, and mobilize public opinion. They provide spaces for debate, dissent, and the articulation of diverse interests. A society where people are engaged, informed, and willing to stand up for democratic values is far more resilient to authoritarian creep. Supporting and participating in civil society organizations strengthens the collective capacity to protect freedom and ensure accountability from those in power. Section 7. The Power of the People: Grassroots Resistance. History teaches that authoritarianism often meets its match in the courage and determination of ordinary people. Grassroots resistance, in its many forms, is a powerful force for democratic renewal. Political mobilization at the local level can challenge policies that erode freedoms. This involves more than just voting. It means participating in town halls, contacting elected officials, and supporting candidates who uphold democratic values. It means organizing within communities to raise awareness and build collective power. Small, local actions, when multiplied across a nation, can create significant pressure for change and hold leaders accountable. Providing counter-narratives is another vital form of resistance. Authoritarian populists thrive on simplistic narratives that scapegoat marginalized groups and offer false solutions to complex problems. Resisting this involves promoting alternative explanations that are inclusive and fact-based. It means challenging disinformation and propaganda with well-reasoned arguments and verifiable information. Creating spaces for dialogue where grievances can be addressed constructively without resorting to hatred or division is crucial. This work can be done through community forums, alternative media, educational initiatives, and artistic expression, all fostering critical thinking. Building positive movements for change is essential for sustained resistance. These movements should not only oppose authoritarian measures, but also offer a compelling vision for a more just and democratic future. They should create inclusive spaces where people from diverse backgrounds can come together to address shared concerns and work towards common goals. Such movements can inspire hope and demonstrate that a different path is possible. By focusing on constructive solutions and promoting solidarity, they can counter the fear and division that authoritarian leaders often seek to sow among the population. Understanding the tactics of authoritarianism is also a form of resistance. Educating citizens about how authoritarian leaders operate, the warning signs to look for, and the dangers of complacency can foster greater resilience. When people recognize the patterns of democratic erosion, they are better equipped to identify and oppose them. This education can happen through formal schooling, public workshops, books, and documentaries. An informed citizenry is less likely to be deceived by propaganda and more likely to engage actively in the defense of democratic principles and institutions for the long term. Section 8. Lessons from history: triumphs over tyranny. History is not only a record of oppression, but also a testament to liberation. The Solidarity movement in Poland during the 1980s is a powerful example. What began as a trade union at the Gdansk shipyards grew into a massive social movement. Despite martial law and government repression, Solidarity persisted through non-violent means. It organized strikes, published underground newspapers, and built a broad coalition of workers, intellectuals, and the Catholic Church. Ultimately, its sustained pressure played a pivotal role in the roundtable talks that led to free elections in 1989 and the end of communist rule in Poland. The American civil rights movement offers profound lessons in resisting entrenched injustice. Facing systematic racial segregation and discrimination, African Americans and their allies employed non-violent protests, sit-ins, freedom rides, and legal challenges. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. articulated a powerful moral vision that galvanized the nation and the world. Despite brutal opposition and violence, the movement achieved landmark legislative victories such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It demonstrated that determined, principled action could dismantle deeply rooted systems of oppression and expand democratic freedoms for all citizens. The Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia in 1989 showed the swift power of peaceful popular uprising. What started with student demonstrations against the one-party communist government quickly escalated into massive protests involving hundreds of thousands of people. Led by figures like Václav Havel, the movement adopted a strategy of non-violence and dialogue. Within weeks, the sheer scale of public demand for change, coupled with the regime's loss of legitimacy, led to the peaceful collapse of communist rule. It was dubbed Velvet for its remarkably smooth and non-violent transition to a democratic government, inspiring people globally. Further afield, the People Power Revolution in the Philippines in 1986 ousted the dictator Ferdinand Marcos. A series of non-violent mass demonstrations, largely concentrated in Manila, brought together citizens from all walks of life, including religious leaders, military defectors, and ordinary families. Facing widespread international condemnation and a united populace, Marcos was forced to flee the country. Similarly, the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, a decades-long struggle involving internal resistance and global pressure, eventually led to the end of racial segregation and the establishment of a multiracial democracy under Nelson Mandela's leadership. These victories underscore hope. Section 9. Guarding Democracy: Actionable Steps for Resilience. Maintaining democratic resilience requires consistent, conscious effort from every citizen. It is not a passive state, but an active practice. One fundamental step is to defend institutions. This means supporting organizations that uphold the rule of law, protect voting rights, and ensure governmental transparency. It means speaking out when these institutions are attacked or undermined, regardless of partisan affiliation. Remember that institutions do not defend themselves. They are defended by people who believe in their importance for a free society. Their strength is our collective strength. Another crucial action is to practice and promote civility and factual discourse. In an age of intense polarization and rampant disinformation, commit to engaging with others respectfully, even when disagreements are profound. Seek out reliable sources of information and challenge falsehoods calmly and with evidence. Discourage the demonization of political opponents. A political culture where debate is based on facts and mutual respect is less vulnerable to the divisive tactics often employed by those seeking to undermine democratic norms. This begins with our own conversations and online interactions. Participate actively in the democratic process. This extends far beyond simply voting in major elections, though that is essential. Engage with local government, attend community meetings, and consider running for office or supporting candidates who are committed to democratic principles. Volunteer for campaigns or causes you believe in. Join or support civil society organizations that advocate for human rights, environmental protection, or social justice. Democracy thrives when citizens are active participants, not passive observers, shaping their communities and their nation. Finally, learn from history and remain vigilant. Understand the warning signs of authoritarianism as discussed. Study how democratic movements have succeeded in the past and how they have sometimes failed. Teach these lessons to the next generation. Do not take freedom for granted. It is a hard-won and precious inheritance that can be lost if not diligently protected. Be wary of leaders who promise easy solutions, who scapegoat minorities, or who express contempt for democratic processes. Eternal vigilance, as the saying goes, is indeed the price of liberty.